All right, the next part of what happens when aggregate demand ends up shifting is now when aggregate demand shifts to the left. This is where classical economists and Keynesian economists differ in their points of view on how the economy self-corrects. And there's two different ways how to handle a decrease in aggregate supply. And this is two different ways that the classical economists, old school economists, believe what would happen when demand shifted to the left. So remember, we're at equilibrium right here with long run aggregate demand, okay, short run aggregate supply, and long run aggregate supply. Now what ended up happening, for some reason demand ended up shifting to the left. Okay, so here's the new aggregate demand curve. And you can see this was where equilibrium was. This is now where equilibrium is between short run and aggregate demand. And of course, in the long run, we got to get somehow back, okay, to the long run curve. So this first example says, perhaps it was consumption that shrank, causing aggregate demand to shift to left. So there's a typo in your packet, so make sure you correct that. It says to the right, it actually shifted to the left. So let me go ahead and draw an arrow that is shifted to the left. Now, what that means is consumption. So overall households, they stop buying so many goods. It could be something like what's going on right now. Okay, people are out of work, people don't have as much money, people are afraid they might lose their job, something's going on with the economy, so people are buying less, let's say right now. Okay, cars, trucks, traveling, airfare, all that kind of stuff. Going on, it says income not consumed is saved. So the second thing that happens, the first was consumption shrank, the second thing is income not consumed, okay, is saved. So the money that we're not spending right now, or the money that doesn't get spent, we're going to put into a savings. Okay, and a lot of times, where do we save our money? We put it in banks. The firms, okay, so number three, okay, the additional saved money is assumed to be borrowed by firms and invested. So what that means is when we take our money and we put it in the banks are sitting on all this money that we're saving. They're not going to just sit on it because they have to pay us interest. They want to make money off our money. So the theory is they're going to take our money and they're going to loan it out. And who's left to, borrow the money and take the money? Of course, businesses and firms. So what they say is, if businesses and firms see these banks with all the money lowering the interest rates because they want to borrow this money out because they have excess of it, they're going to lower the interest rates, and eventually firms are going to say, oh, it's good, let's borrow money and let's spend it. So the increase in investments, and investments are when firms and businesses are spending money. So the increase in business and the firms spending money causes aggregate demand to shift back to the right. Okay, or what frightened consumers is now gone and their consumption starts to return. So what happens is what isn't spent is saved. Whatever saved is then borrowed by firms and businesses, and aggregate demand starts shifting to the right. And eventually, as it starts to shift to the right, it takes away a lot of those frightened ideas from people, and they start consuming it again, and eventually we go from point A to B and then back to A. Okay, so that's the first way how the classical economists believed that a decrease in aggregate demand would fix itself.